Every day at 3:30, in a town that rested by the sea, at the end of the narrowest cobblestone street, there sat a man who looked troubled and bleak. No matter if the sun was glowing or if a gentle wind was blowing, he wouldn't smile, he never grinned. He only sat there stiff and grim.
Coffee or tea?
The cafe girl would inquire, and his furrowed brow would turn even more dire. Nothing could please him, not candy or cakes, not money or honey or peppermint shakes. He just sat and had coffee and toast with no jam, and said to himself,
"This is just who I am."
Some thought it was due to his hideous nose. Some thought that perhaps his face had just froze. Some thought it was from the hunch in his back. And some said his heart had simply turned black. It's well known, of course, that people love news and gossiping over whomever they choose. Nobody cares for history or facts, but what good is a story if you have none of that? For example, this fellow with his face in his hands, this melancholy gentleman's name is Dan. One day long ago, when Dan wasn't so old, when he wasn't so stiff, so numb, or so cold.
Dessert?
Asked the girl and disturbed his malaise, and he simply replied with a cold-hearted gaze. Anyways, one day long ago, Dan was wed to his love. Her name was Lulu, and Dan held her above everyone that he knew, would see or would meet, and each day they would walk down the cobblestone street. Lulu left Dan, and though she'd always been true, he assumed she had left him for somebody new. A man, Dan guessed, with a much bigger ring, more handsome, more smart, more everything. Now Dan comes and sits alone by the sea, at the place they would go at 3:30, tight-lipped and frigid and quite taciturn, and waits for his love to never return.
Back with more coffee.
The girl declared,
Your cup is half empty.
but Dan only stared,
Just like my heart.
was his silent insight. But out loud he just frowned and said,
No, I'm all right.
I hate days like this.
she said, and Dan heard.
Why would anyone look when I talk? That's absurd. The birds are too loud, and I ache in my bones. I wish that today I had never left home.
The problem
Dan said,
is the wind is too strong.
The sun is too bright.
she said,
The days are too long.
This food is atrocious.
The coffee is bland.
And everyone acts like it's always so grand.
Just then, they both turned and looked up at the sky, at a batch of balloons drifting lazily by. It crossed the white clouds and continued to climb,
Love isn't real.
they said at the same time. They looked at each other, their heads full of bile, and on Dan's rigid lips came the hint of a smile. And ever so slightly, yes, only a hair, Dan reached out his foot and pushed out a chair. The girl smiled slightly and stuck out her hand.
Marlene.
She said smartly, and Dan replied.
Dan.
So today at 3:30, in a town that still rests by the sea, at the end of the street, what you'll see will depend on just what sort of person you are. The end.